I could just start now, right?
Go, go, go.
All right, I'll start recording now. So we don't mess it up. So, hey, okay, I'm gonna talk about depth in pgBokeh. So when I was doing this, I realized that I think a lot of people don't know like what the depth channel is exactly. So I'm just gonna start with the very basics, and then I'll move on to what the depth channel is, how the camera works with like how the camera's actually working with depth of field, and then how we can use pgBokeh, specifically the one that we use in our pipeline to kind of achieve what we want to achieve. So the very first thing, I have this image of a room. So at the room here, and you have the depth channel. So whenever people watch the view of the depth channel, it's obviously very blown out. All the values are very high. We get values in like 100 range over here in the back of the room. And people like obviously they gamma this down and everything. So there's a couple ways to view this. Obviously, it's very unuseful to just see a screen full of white. So that would be called the raw. It's also like the real world units. So what it's telling you here is inside of the 3D application that is the actual distance away from the camera measured in units. So it's 94 something away, right? Or over here, there's a kitchen table that's really close, and that's only 6 units away. So that's the very first thing to know, is that this is like actual information telling us how far away things are in units. So I see a lot of people when they're just starting out. They're what did I do here? Did something? Oh, this thing. So I see a lot of people when they're starting out, they'll just take a white point and they'll just select stuff until it looks cool, and they say, okay, that looks really cool. Now it's my new depth channel, and then they use that um to drive something. They drive the focus or anything. So we don't want to do that because you're destroying the actual information. You're basically scaling the world. You're like scaling it kind of arbitrarily. You're just sort of grading it, and it's not very useful because those values are actually going to they're going to give us some actual real world like calculations in based off the distances, based off the camera and everything. So we don't want to actually manually do anything to the depth channel. Um, the other way that a depth channel is expressed, if it's not this way, is you'll see when it comes either out of Nuke or sometimes when you use deep to image, it's called normalized, and you'll see this. Now there's some kind of stuff going on here. What did I do? I must have messed this up. Yeah, I just wanted to clean up this little edges. So here we got the room. So you'll see this, and if I view this room, you'll see that if I, gained the raw image down, that the white is farther away, right? So the more distance it has, the more it goes towards white. Um, and the exact opposite is happening with the inverse. It's also called 1 over z, and it's called normalized. So what does normalized mean? Normalized literally means within the range of 0 and 1. So this is a way to like visualize something easily. You could also save this image out if you were saving a JPEG or something, it's going to be something visible. But these are the same. These two images are the same. I'll get rid of this so you can see. These two images are the same. It's just doing literally the calculation. And why do we do that? Like, what's the kind of math that's going on here? And so, if we go to the math, back to math class, you could go from 1 to any number you want. You can go to 10,000. You can just go really high up until a million, right? You can also do the same if you just put a 1 over the number. It gets infinitely small, right? It just keeps going down. It keeps dividing and dividing and dividing, and this will go on basically forever. It will never get to 0. Because you can always add a 0 like before the decimal point. It would be 0.000001. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but it never gets to 0. And that's what this is doing. So this is a way to maintain that. So that's why the farther away you are, the darker it gets, but it should never be 0. If you're at 0, technically you're at infinity or some crazy undefined number. So that's where you might get some like non-pixels or something if you try to convert that back. But Yeah, the way that you would just do that, just very simply, if you ever see this, you can just go back by doing a 1 over R. If you're viewing it in the red channel, 1 divided by R. So I can just copy that to all the channels. And now I've gone back to the that channel. So you can see I'm viewing these two. They're exactly the same. So basically I'm just converting. I'm just converting one to the other. And so when you are combining stuff with Nuke and a CG render, a lot of times one will be the inverse or one will be this 1 over Z. So you'll see something that looks like this, and then you'll see like the CG render that's in real world values. And once again, this image coming from Nuke or coming from Deep to Image or so, this is real world values, but you need to convert it back into real world values. So it's a conversion. So, but it's just simple. It's just one's a fraction going infinitely towards zero, and the other one's just a real number going to infinity, basically, and beyond. Not beyond, because you can't go, well, yeah. So that's just this little thing, little math. So the second thing, let's see. Okay, I need to go to one of these slides here. So now we get that's what the depth channel is. We know how to convert it now. We know that the units are actually important. Why are the units important? So there are three main ways. This is a very convenient image for myself that I found online. There's three main ways to affect the depth of field. One would be changing the aperture of the camera. I'll explain that in a second. You can see like the different sizes of this red area is like the area in focus, right? And the fall off of it. You can change the distance to camera, the focal distance. That's the where you're focusing at and how far away that is to the actual camera. And you can change the focal length, and I'll explain that also. And so you have different focal lengths, and you can see the different sizes of the region of interest, if you will. It's also called the hyperfocus distance, I learned, which is the exact distance from the camera to the point where you're focusing on. Okay, so let's talk about each one of those things individually to understand it better, because I, it's as a compositor, you should know what cameras are doing, but I like to break it down into really, really stupid, simple terms. So let's break it down into, let's make ourselves feel dumb with this thing. So let's talk about aperture. What is aperture? I have these really beautiful images from the images. Okay, so aperture is the size like of the lens that how much light is going in, right? And it's measured in f-stops. And you can see here, for example, that the wider the aperture, or the lower the f-stop number, because it gets higher as it closes, which is very counterintuitive. I don't know who played that stupid trick, but um, anyways, so the lower the aperture, or the f-stop rather, the more depth of field. And the way that I trick myself into thinking about this in my head is that like the bigger the size of this opening, the bigger the bokeh shape. That's how I'm tricking myself a little bit. You can see here, maybe is good. So this will be, it's called shallow depth of field. That would be with something's very out of focus like this. You can see this is f-stop 2.8 versus an f-stop 32, which actually means that it's much smaller hole and you'll be in focus. So what does that mean for us? It's also some cheat sheets here. So you have a big aperture, you have a bear, and the bear is with a smaller aperture, it is out of focus. And then the bigger aperture, it's in focus. Okay, so I hope you guys can look at those images later. I don't know what I did here. Yeah, so we can see what it's doing here. So this is like fully open. This is f-stop, very low. It never goes below 1, I think. I'm sure you can cheat it like with pgBokeh, but it approaches 1. So it's like 1 until numbers like 32 or 64 or something like that. But you can see that as it's very small, the area of focus will get wider. So more things will be in focus, okay? And I don't know what I have here. Oh, just a cool shutter speed thing. What's the takeaway? The lower the f-stop number, the more out of focus it will be. The higher the f-stop number, the sharper the image will be. Okay, that's the takeaway. So f-stop really low, more out of focus. Okay, we got that down. Okay, let's talk about the next thing, distance to camera. So that would be this one here. So depending on whether your subject is really close or far, or how far away your camera is, it's going to change. And the farther away that you're focusing on, it's widening that region of focus, right? So if your subject is really far away, it's going to a lot of things are going to be in focus because you have to go really far away to see it, so it's like widening completely. And I want you to pay attention. I know this is like a visualization of the depth, but as you go further away, the ratio between what is in focus is different between the near point, and the near point is the point between the camera and the focus point, and the distance, like the focus point away from it, is the far. So what happens is um, it starts about like halfway to the camera, and the focus point is less. It's a less distance, I guess. I don't know how to say that very well. Um, the ratio was about like 1/3 to 2/3, or sometimes more. But let me just use my little cheat sheet here because this guy was drawing really good. So we have your focus plane. That's the point. That's the point of things that are in focus. Then we have something like this. What is it saying here? Um, Basically, all this stuff is saying if the object is closer to you, if it's really close to you, the ratio between the near focus point and the far focus point starts to become half and half. As you go further away, it starts to become here's a good example here. So as it's really close, it's about 50-50, and then as you get farther away, it starts to get like 40-60, and then eventually it'll get to about 1/3 in the front and then infinity in the back. So like it'll just so it's actually not um like half the distance to you, and then on the backside half the distance to that. It's actually actual equation, and it depends on the focal length, it depends on the lens, it depends on how far away it is. So it's just something to keep in mind, that it's not just like, oh, here's your focus point, and then 50% to the camera is in focus, and then if I just take that number and I just add that to the back, then that will be the focus point. That's not how it works. It actually is a ratio number, and it sort of slides around depending on the distance. I'm sure I didn't explain that very well, but here's kind of an example as well. You have like 1/3 is the focus point, and then 1/3 to you is in focus, and then about 2/3. But then again, the farther away that is, that can go from like 1/3 to infinity, or like 20% to infinity or so. So this is what pgBokeh is going to help us do, because it's doing all of that sort of in the pgBokeh. I don't know what I have here. Yeah, okay. Another thing to keep in mind, I love these images, they're great. Another thing to keep in mind is the focus plane, and I can't really draw a line here. I could draw on it. Yes, I can. So this plane here means that the bottom of this trunk would be out of focus. If the camera was pointing directly at the tree, then this part would be in focus. But as soon as you tilt it up, now the top of the tree is going to be in focus, and then this is going to be out of focus because maybe the focal plane is something like this. And there's an image that's going to help us see what that means. So here, her face and her hands are in focus, and that is sort of because the focus point, the plane, it's almost like a wall perpendicular to the camera. So her head and her hands are in that same plane, and her body's not, and that's why the image sort of looks like she's out of focus, but her hands and her head are. So just keep that in mind. Like depending on where the camera is facing, like that's a very strict like a wall of focus that's perpendicular to the camera completely. Something to keep in mind. Now, why are these real world distances important? These distances here of like 45 and 100. So this back wall, let's just take the back wall, for example. So here we have a room. We all know what a room looks like. I'm sure we're in one. So we have a room, and it's about 100 units away. Let's just say it's 100. So that doesn't tell us much because we don't know 100 what, 100 what. So this is the part of the presentation that I'm going to enjoy because I'm the American that's going to teach metric scale units. So what is it? So let's take a look at it. Is it 100 millimeters? Probably not, because a millimeter is about the size of a dime or a pencil tip or a grain of rice. So it's probably not that. It's 100 centimeters? Probably not, because a centimeter is the size of a ladybug or a blueberry or a width of a fingernail. So I'm going to skip this one because it's the long forgotten cousin in the metric units. Is it 100 meters? Well, no, because 100 meters is about the size of a telephone pole or a bus or a pickup truck with a trailer in the back of it or a tennis court. I think sorry, 10. I'm fucking this up. So 10 meters, my bad. I just have to go this one. To 100 meters, obviously, is the size of Statue of Liberty, Big Ben, a tennis court, a football field, a racetrack. So what I wanted to talk about is our long lost cousin, the decimeter, which is 10 centimeters, which is about the size of a bagel, or a hand, or a deck of cards, or melon. So that is actually 100 decimeters away, because that's what they were using in the CG side. So now I have to do the cheat sheet. So 100 decimeters would be about 10 meters, which would make sense because that is about, size of half a tennis court or so, or a school bus or something. So that's about the size of a room. So it's important to keep that in mind because in pgBokeh you can define what unit it's using. So you need to either ask the CG guys or just take a wild guess of how far away it is based off the metric system. So please don't forget about the decimeter. Also what is it? The decameter? Decameter between a meter and a hectometer. Anyways, a lot of stuff going on. So what's the takeaway? The scene scale matters a lot. It really matters a lot because that's gonna be determining, for example, what how big the region of focus is. So you really need to know how far away the camera is and what the focal length is and everything, so that it knows how far away to put the near and far focus planes and the fall off between those. The near and far depth of field are calculated differently. So it's not just equidistance away from the point of focus. It's not like 50-50. It's different between the near and the far. And that is something that pgBokeh does for you. So let it do that for you. Basically, that's one of the most powerful parts of it. And then the third takeaway is when something is closer to you, the ratio is closer to 50-50. But when it's farther away, it gets towards 1/3 to 2/3, or even up to infinity in the back. At a certain distance, I think it says it right here. Yeah, it just goes into infinity. So like everything will be in focus. And I mean that's what, if you pull out your iPhone and like take a picture of a landscape on a mountain, everything's gonna be in focus basically, and that's kind of the point. So let's move on to focal length. Focal length. This is kind of a cool chart. Focal length is kind of the width of what the lens is taking in. So the smaller the number, so like focal length of 14 is saying, so it's almost like 180 degrees. And then as you move up to like 300 millimeters, it's focusing smaller and smaller. Like you're looking at something it's called telephoto. You're looking at something very far away. And something that Ernest and I discovered, sort of like a fluke. This will help you maybe as far as like framing wise of it. So here I have a Nuke camera, so I'm just looking at a scene, and I have focal length of 50 on this particular render here, and on this one I have focal length of 100. I didn't change anything. I just changed the focal length from 50 to 100. So at least framing wise, I know it's doing different math in the camera and everything, but framing wise, if I just take this first one that's at focal length of 50 and I just have a scale times 2, that is the same image as 100. So framing wise, focal length is just a zoom. So I don't know if anybody knew that, but I thought it was kind of cool because it makes me think. So literally the math is like, oh, it's 50 to 100. Okay, that's twice as big. That's like scale times two. Like you just zoomed in twice. Um, thought it was pretty cool. I don't know if anybody kind of knew that, but yeah. I don't know what I have here. I think I'm just messing with the pgBokeh. So what's the takeaway? Takeaway is the higher the focal length number, the more out of focus. And if you want to just know for yourself, a funny trick, focal length is just a fancy name for zoom. If you're talking about framing wise, obviously, if you're changing the focal length of the camera, it's changing like the amount that's in focus and everything. But purely from like a CG point of view, that's kind of what it is. And I can demonstrate that here. So my focus point will be on this ball. So if I increase this number, this focal length number here, it should get more out of focus, and it does. So we can go really high out of focus. There you go. And if I lower it, everything should get more in focus. So once again, the lower the number, more in focus. Higher the focal length number, more out of focus. Okay. So that's breaking down to real easy. And I'll put this back to 50. I think that was good. That's calculating. I just wanted to also demonstrate this aperture thing, just so we know. So we knew that the smaller the number, it does the exact opposite. The smaller the number, the more out of focus. So if I lower this aperture, things are getting out of focus faster, and the out of focus is larger. And if I increase this number of the aperture, it's basically widening the area of focus, and it's lowering the amount of focus that it is. And there's this convenient like plus and minus signs here. So you can kind of like step up as if you were in doing a camera. So it's pretty convenient. I think it's doing you're kind of getting into non-existent real world values like point. I don't think there's ever a 0.5 f-stop, but could be wrong. Maybe there's a camera out there that does it. So you could either use the slider or these plus and minus signs. I kind of just use the slider. Another cool thing about we'll talk a little bit about pgBokeh versus the pgBokeh node versus the R Trickster pgBokeh. Basically, we brought everything to the front that you'd want, and we kind of hid everything that that you don't want under the hood. I also wanted to tell you about this world scale feature because we added this in the original pgBokeh. Like most of the Europeans I know, they completely forgot about decimeters, and they just go from centimeters to meters. But it is an actual unit of measurement, and we do use it sometimes at Trickster. So we included a decimeter here. And I think that is the default, at least for some of our projects. I'm not sure if that's like on every project, maybe it's going to be different, but at least for some of them that we've been working on, they're using decimeters. So that is the real world unit in Maya or in Katana that they're using to do all the calculations. And if you just think about it, if a light is 100 centimeters away from something, it's different than if it's 100 meters away from something. So like they'll fall off and everything if the lights are going to be different. So it's really important to know how big your scene is in that sense. So you can actually select this, and under the hood, it's doing kind of conversion. Here you have aperture, focal length, focus plane. We have a picker here that you can pick. I should probably use some example. What was I just using? This one. Yeah. So here, I'll just make a new one. pgBokeh UU is ours. So I'm just gonna leave that, plug it in. I'll plug in the camera right now. Another cool feature of ours is that you can just grab the focal length from the camera, and it changed to 50. If the camera's animated, it'll copy the animation. So if the focal length, if they're zooming in and out, for example, it'll grab that focal length from the actual shot camera. And this is really important, and it's really, I cannot state it enough how important it is to grab it from the camera. We have all these amazing match movers who are calculating the focal length per shot of the camera and all the nuances there. And that's the camera that they're using in CG to render stuff in the appropriate scene size. So we have that, one of the three, we have it for free, basically. If you just grab it from the camera of your shot, Boom. You don't need to worry about it. Now, if it looks like a crazy number, you can go to adjust. Also, you could look up your shots camera on like the count sheet or one of the documents that we have on set data. So if you see that it was filmed with a 100 millimeter lens, you can just type in 100 millimeters. Maybe that's good enough. Um, so this is one of the three. And the other two is aperture, which, as we said, the lower the aperture, the more out of focus it is. I think I have to pick the point. That's another thing about our tools that if you hover over a point, it's going to pick the distance. So that's number two. That's distance. So we pick where the focus is, easy. So that's two of three. And then basically aperture. And of course, it's going to screw up now. Why is it screwing up? Maybe because this is two. I don't know. I messed something up. But okay, maybe the scale, centimeters. I'm not sure. Let's see. Grab this one. Aperture. Okay, I should have left the other one in there. I don't know what's happening. But no problem. We can just move on. The other one was working. So, okay. Let's see, where are we now? Let's visualize this better. So here I've got a checkerboard and a pgBokeh, and basically I'll just move to the end of it. I just have a ramp from 0 at the bottom to 5, okay? And as I move this focus point around, you could see kind of what we were talking about. The closer I am to 0, aka the closer we are to the camera, it's about 50-50. Like this focus region, I actually have a visualization here. So the white is going to be out of focus. This green line is where we are exactly in focus, like the focus point, and the ramp is sort of the area, the fall off of the area of focus. Now, if I go back here, as I move this around, this is what pgBokeh is doing. So the ratio, as you can see, it's still about halfway between the camera and the focus point, but over here in the back, it's going much farther away. So you can see that's the big difference. And then here, you know, if this image was really big, maybe this would be like a kilometer away or something like that if you get really far away. So it all depends on like the units and everything. Now let's see what happens if we change the unit scale. So you could see it's changing the sort of the scale of everything here. There is this number here, which is a multiplier of the scene. So you can, this is an area, this little number here next to the units. That is an area where you can creatively control, you're artificially scaling up the world. But if you know what it's doing, you know that you're sort of increasing the area of focus. So you're cheating, but that's an area of of tastefulness or artistic license. Again, if you increase the aperture, it's more area is going to be in focus. In focus is the black area, the area that's in the ramp here. And as you decrease it, the area of focus gets tighter down to a very specific point. So if I were to go back to this result, it should be very, very tight. And as I increase the aperture, I'll just click the plus and minus. Sorry, as I increase the f-stop number rather, more and more things will get in focus. And you can see here, it's a very, very clear that the near focus point is quicker to fall off out of focus than what's behind the far focus point. So yeah, you can play around with this if you want to see like how the ratio is going. And we can do it with this room too. So I basically have the room, I'm doing the same kind of thing. So let's play around with some of the numbers. Once again, if you decrease the focal length, more things are going to be in focus. Let's check if that's true. Yes. If you change the distance, so I'll just put it on the wall. Now more of the image should be in focus. So now I'm focusing on the back wall, and it made everything much wider. So more things, only the white area is going to be out of focus. And if let's just go back to aperture. If I decrease the f-stop number, then more things are going to be out of focus as well. It's going to, increase that. Now I ran into a unique issue, or maybe I'm just too dumb, but I ran into an issue where I couldn't change the size, the maximum size Like say I wanted to get this like this table, I wanted it to be like more out of focus. I was having trouble um with that because I was changing the scale and everything, but ultimately it had a limit. But what I kind of figured out, I think we're gonna adjust this tool after I've been playing with it for the last few days. Um, there's this extra option in pgBokeh that allows you to multiply the front defocus and the back defocus from the focal point differently. And that's in this like extra area, this front multiplier. So I found out like you can like fake it to be more out of focus if you kind of increase this number. And if you expression length the number, you can actually get it to be, a bit more out of focus. But maybe I still need to work on it. But yeah, that is kind of a cheat to like make things more out of focus faster. To like either adjust these separately or to link them together and just use this as like a scale. Anyhow, I'll just move on. So this is kind of the I could show you there too. So I'm sort of scaling the world. It is sort of what this world scale is doing. It's kind of doing the same thing. Oops. Yeah, I'll just do it like minutely. Here you go. So you can see we're um, tightening the area of focus by changing the scale of the world. That's why it's really important to know, because if you set it at the default centimeters, it's not going to look right if you actually put things where they should be. Yeah, it's gonna look strange. But if you put it back to centimeters, then you'll get some actual results. So okay, let's move on. The importance of expanding depth edges. This is specific to our tool, which it's probably going to need a workaround after I figured out that there's a lot of bugs in this. Let's go back to frame one. So here we have a cat. I'll put this to film. Here we have a cat. I hope this is, yeah, the focus point here. Let's take a look at the depth channel. Now the depth channel, like most of the other channels, comes in, it's pre-multiplied. That means that here it's a unit of 11, but then obviously when you get towards the edges, because it's pre-multiplied, it falls off very quickly because it's being multiplied with alpha. Now, that's not great. And sort of like a convolve, it's depending on the depth channel to know how much to make something out of focus. And it's kind of too stupid to realize that it should be like it should take that pixel and make it like a whole blur. So it requires that you expand the depth channel. So I'll just visualize this. Here, Mikhail Habenik made a great tool. It works very well, called the MDiv oversize. You might have noticed that in all of our layer sets, expanding our depth, and it just does a really good job. It's sort of like the blur on premult trick. I think it's doing some slightly different math probably, but it does a really good result. It doesn't ruin the edges or anything. But if I go back to the pgBokeh, you can see that if I don't do anything, it's going to be, oh no, did I do something wrong? Yes, I did something wrong. I'm going to, yeah, this is important. I'm not doing anything yet. I need to inject it. So now I've replaced the depth channel. Now it'll work. So if I grow it here, you can see if it's 0, basically it's, how do you say, if the depth does not cover the area of defocus, then it's going to cut off like this. So that's why you need to expand it. And as I expand it, you can see that it's expanding to the area. So you want to make it big enough so that it's covering, especially if you have heavy defocus, so that it's covering stuff. Now it's kind of doing some weird stuff here. I'm not sure why. Of course, this is live, so maybe because inside it's doing something. Yes. Okay. So there's an issue with this that we're going to try to fix. And the issue is this pgBokeh, this trickster pgBokeh, already has exactly this node inside of it. So if you give it something that is doing it already, it does it twice and it screws it up because it like unpremults it and does like weird stuff. And so I don't know if I can show you here, but if I unpremult this twice, yeah, it's basically if you unpremult it twice, it does some weird stuff. So unfortunately, at the very, very moment, that's broken. but that's okay because it can be very easy to fix that. What pgBokeh TRX wants at the moment is the depth channel to be pre-multiplied. So even if I did this oversized, or even if you using this from the layer set, if you're using it from the layer set, you can either disable this for pgBokeh, or you can make a pre-mult and you could just pre-mult the depth channel, and then it should pre-mult there, and then everything should be. Oh, I'll just check this. Because I need to grow. So this is what this grow pixels is. This grow pixels here. So if I change that back to 30 or so, now it should work, although it's not really working. Well, what's happening here? Oh, is it because it's disabled? Yeah, I kind of need to cheat right now, but I think we're gonna fix it for later because I just realized it was a huge problem. But this should be fine now. If I go back here, if I uncheck preview, yeah, now it should be working. What's the point? It wants a pre-multiplied depth channel so that it can grow the pixels itself. If you plug in a depth channel that already has the pixels grown on the edges, it'll try to do it twice, and it'll unpre-mult it where it looks like a mess, and then you'll get some bad edges. That is also the case. I think I have an example here. So let's just look at a depth channel here. So what this thing wants, in order for this MDiv oversized tool to work, you can't just give it the depth channel. If I see here, you see that it's doing some weird stuff. It's because the depth channel does not have an alpha channel. What this what this tool, the oversized wants, is it wants depth in RGB, but alpha in alpha. So we just copy back the alpha channel, and now it's going to do the right thing. So if I expand this, now it does the right thing. So that's very important to know because it's doing the unpre-multiply. So if you feed it something that doesn't have the right alpha channel, it's gonna mess up. You can also do a trick. I do this all the time. I'll just do it from scratch. So here I have a shuffle. I shuffle out the depth channel. Boom, depth channel. And then in the into, I set it to RGB, and where the alpha channel is, I know you could do it with the new one, but here you go. Now I have an alpha channel with depth, and now it's working again. So it's working appropriately. So that also works. What else works? Oh, if you convert it, inverting depth requires unpre-multiplied depth. What am I doing here? So I've converted the depth channel. So this might be from like Nuke or something that you have something there in Nuke. But this this depth conversion, this 1/1 Z, needs to be done with an unpremulted image. Then you can premult it after, and then this tool will also work. All roads lead back to give it a premulted depth channel to do the expansion. I just wanted to show you some examples of things that went wrong. So this went wrong because we tried to unpremult it and then convert it. And yeah, it's all wrong. And this one went wrong because we converted 1/Z without unpremulting it first. And then if we try to do the oversize, it just goes crazy into like crazy numbers. So yeah, okay. So avoiding just knowing what should be going into the pgBokeh. I think that one step right there probably causes 99% of problems, to be honest. So just be aware of what's going into the pgBokeh, and also you can do this preview. You can do this preview, and you can see if you just lower the exposure. So you could see if something went wrong. So here you go. That looks like something went totally wrong. If you try to grow it, you could see like it's not doing the right thing. So that'll just give you a hint if you just click this preview button of something gone horribly wrong on the edges. So you got 20 minutes left. I think I'm nearing the end, so let's just try to move on. Okay, so combining different depths. So we know that there's the conversion where you might get a room with real world values. And went a step too far. So this is a deep scene. So okay, we have the deep scene. I've combined the cat. Here's the cat. When we use the deep to image, it makes the depth 1/Z. Basically, anytime you have a depth coming out of Nuke, it's 1/Z. it's the normalized version. And so if you wanted to change it back to real world units, you can either do this expression with the 1 over z or 1 over r, or I just made a tool here. I'll probably publish it. I just converted it. So now it's going back. So here it starts, and now it's just flipping the fraction. Yeah. So, and you can choose whether it's unpremulted to begin with or not. So just know that even though this comes out of Nuke, if you ever wanted to convert it back into actual values in the real world, you can just do that, and we can see the depth is pretty much the same. It's actually slightly different. I found this interesting. It's slightly different because the depth is not coming from the render. The depth is coming from the deep. And if you just do a deep to image, that depth channel is different from the original depth channel. So if I just do this, I found that kind of interesting. I don't know why. If I just convert both of them. Yeah, they're slightly different. Don't know why. Just is what it is. Maybe the deep is more accurate. Not sure. But anyways, it is 1-to-1. Like if it's just simple conversion fraction. So why am I even talking about this? For example, if you have here's a image of Abomination here, and I need to add some fire or some cards or something. In this case, he's juggling 3 balls in the background or something, and so these are placed appropriately in 3D space. But when I view the Nuke one, it's 1 over z, and when I view where'd that go? And when I view Abomination, it's real world units. And so obviously, if I don't do anything, if I just combine those together and look at depth, that's not going to fit very well together. So you need to convert it, and in this case, I pre-multiplied it as well, because the depth conversion requires pre-multiplication. So Abomination's depth is already pre-multiplied, but whenever you use the scanline render in Nuke, it not only is it 1 over z, but it's unpremultiplied by default. So if you want both of the things to be pre-multiplied, you need to actually take that extra step and pre-multiply the depth channel. But anyways, now we can use a pgBokeh and place it on his head or on this far ball, and now everything is sort of matching. If we didn't do that, then they'd be wildly unmatched, and everything would be kind of crazy because it's trying to select. You could even see here the focus plane is 0.02 versus what it should be at 31. So you could see that. And I almost mentioned the most important part of this whole thing. It doesn't actually matter what you plug in, because there's this little checkbox here, 1 over z. So if I were to convert the depth channel here, if I were to convert the depth channel and then I selected 1 over z, it's going to be the same result. I don't know if I can I prove that? So if I just plug this in here, let's see the camera, and then I uncheck 1 over z, this should be the same image with some edge issues. But yeah, they're the same amount of autofocus. I'm sure I'm forgetting to do something, but I'll just ignore that for now. So what do I have in here? In order to combine them so they fit with one another, you might have to invert or normalize 1 over z, one of them, to fit together. That's another very strong reason why we don't go in here and just start manually doing whatever we want when we start just selecting stuff, because then you've just kind of ruined it. So if you ever needed to place a card, then you would need to do this exact same thing with the card's depth and everything. So just let them live in the world where they're supposed to live, and just let pgBokeh do the math. Let Nuke do the math of where the focus planes and stuff should be. Yeah, you can use the real world or 1 over z, and you could just tell pgBokeh which one you're using based off of the 1 over z button here. So it doesn't matter what you plug in, as long as it knows what you're plugging in. So because it's just going to do the conversion basically inside of pgBokeh. Okay, so we move on. How to use deep with pgBokeh for better results. Okay, so when you have a scene like this, so this is a deep scene from Captain Marvel, I think, and we have the people hovering around in the spacesuits. It was very complicated because all these things are individual renders. Like she's holding this, I don't know, wrench or something, and she's holding that and this thing, and this person's in front of this, and it's a complicated depth scene. So if you were to just use the depth coming from this, if I just look at that, so when you combine it, it gives you a depth channel, but once you go deep to image, it actually like bakes everything in there. So it's just like if you receive the render, and if you do that, you end up getting these edge issues. If I can get it to load. Yeah, so you start to get some subtle edge issues. Let's see if I can get a good something like this, like on his edge. It's not very crisp. It's very aliased, um, especially if something has a very hard line. Maybe this helmet's a good example too. It doesn't quite know. Oh, is this pixel in the background or is this in the foreground? And if you had bokeh shapes, if something was really out of focus in the background, um, you'd want that to appear like a bokeh, but as soon as somebody covered it up, maybe that'll disappear in a, that's not really what would happen. Um, so the reason why it's erroring out is basically because Nuke doesn't know what's behind. It doesn't know what's behind this guy because we lost all that information. So there's a benefit to using pgBokeh, and this is probably the only tool that can do it at the moment, where it uses Nuke's deep system to it knows where everything is. It knows the pixel values of the things behind other things. If you combine it all with a deep. Now, I'm not talking about if you render a deep image, like a deep scene, out of the renderer, because then you end up with the same problem where it doesn't know what's behind things. But if you deep combine everything in Nuke, so if you were to deep combine all these people over this thing, Nuke still knows that this thing is in the background. Like it has internally, it has all the pixel information of what's behind this foreground astronaut, right? Now, this is a head trip. It's very, very stupid, but what it wants, I'll try to make this all very clear. Basically, the only thing that this thing cares about is deep, okay? So if I do deep to image, if I grade this, if I make it, I don't know, whatever, if I just do something crazy here. So if I make this red, if I look at this pgBokeh, it does not give a shit about any of that. Why doesn't it give a shit about any of that? It's weird. I just made a grade to the image because it only cares about what's coming in a deep, but it still needs an image. If you don't plug an image, it doesn't give you anything. So it still needs an image. From what I can understand, I might be completely wrong, but what it wants is channels. And by channels, I mean like it wants to know what the channels are. And maybe I'm completely wrong. So I could also do this, but maybe it also wants the depth. Oh no, I can't do that, can I? So I don't know. I don't know what it's looking for, actually. I thought it was just the channels, but it could be something else. So just plug it in, but know that nothing you do here matters. I can make the gamma crazy. It only cares about what's coming into deep. What does that mean? That means if you do the color corrections, you need to do them here, up in here, before the deep. So I don't know what I just graded. Let's grab another one. Here we go. Let's make this some color. So it wants to do all the color corrections up there. So if you had layer sets, you'd want the layer sets to happen before. This is very, very specific cases, but I'm just saying like you cannot. You basically have to do it beforehand, then deep combine it, and then do it. But let's ignore those grades and then take a look at the result. So once again, it only cares about what's coming into the deep input. It's using the deep data. It's using what it knows about what's behind the characters to get a cleaner edge because it's going to defocus them separately. And it's going to ignore the image input, but it still needs the image input for whatever reason that I haven't figured out yet. Okay, so this is the difference between these two. I hope there's a big difference. Here we go. So this is the cleaner version. because you could see, let's go to a problem area. Here, the edge looks very crisp. This guy is in focus, and his edges should be crisp, and they are crisp. But in the depth version, using the depth, it doesn't know, it can't figure out exactly where he is, and it's giving us problems because it doesn't know. Also, let's see, around his hands, you can see, I mean, it's very fine details what I'm talking about. But sometimes, if it's a very heavily out of focus scene, here we go, is another. So this part of the space station behind her helmet is very far away and it's receiving a lot of defocus. And then her helmet is in front of it, and it doesn't quite know what if this pixel should be in the background or should be in the foreground because the depth channel is doing it's kind of in between, so it's somewhere in the middle. Whereas the pgBokeh, it just knows because it knows, okay, this was in the background, I defocus this, and this was in the foreground, I defocus that separately. So that's how you would use it. I wouldn't recommend doing that all the time because it's obviously very heavy because you need an actual deep setup as opposed to all of our deep combine stuff that we like to do. This doesn't work with this deep combine setups. Um, Now I was playing around with this. I'll just mention this in 2 minutes. I noticed that this depth channel did not look very good. I'll try to scale it up here. It's very aliased. I don't know. It's really weird. I found out. I don't know if I'd recommend this or not, but if you convert all the depths, so all these are in real world depth. I converted all of them, and I used the max. I tried using Z merge, but it didn't work, so I just used the max instead. And what did I do here? Basically, I just shuffled that into the depth, and I think that this depth here looks cleaner than that depth in a lot of areas. I know it's very hard to see. There you go. So it's a little bit sharper. I'm not quite sure why the deep was doing that, but maybe you want to try converting everything and maxing it. It does not work with real world. You have to do the max on the inverted, on the 1 over Z version. So that's all I'll say about that. Yeah, okay. So let's just talk quickly. We got 5 more minutes. I think we can get through this because it's very, very easy stuff. So the importance of bloom. So I just speckled this space station with a bunch of values that were really high, and I'm doing a pgBokeh on it. And so how do we get things to bloom? Well, I do a gamma sandwich. That is a good way to do it. So this is without the gamma, and you can see that it's sort of looking like a blur. So these little specks are like value 10 or something. So it's sort of looking like a blur. But if you do a gamma sandwich, you'll get sharper bokeh. And what is a gamma sandwich? What am I talking about? I take a grade, I gamma down, I take another grade, I expression link the gamma, and then I click the reverse button and I put it at the end. So, oh no, which one did I use? This one. So yeah, I'll just delete these two. No, did I do it wrong? I'll do it again. So, boom, reverse, and I'll just plug this one in, I'll delete this one. So you can actually control how much it is by changing the gamma. So gamma of 1, it was doing nothing. As I lower it, it's making the bokeh shape sharper. It's a gamma sandwich, and that is going to give you beautiful bokehs, kind of like this. That's what we're trying to achieve. And you could see that they're all sort of plussing on each other as well. But they're nice and crisp. They don't look like a blur. Like these bokeh shapes do not look like this. This is a sign of really bad bokeh. This is like what your iPhone does when it's trying to fake a portrait or something. But a real bokeh should be crisp. It should look like the kernel blown up and plussed. So that's we can achieve that with a gamma sandwich. Now, one of the classic problems that we have with pgBokeh is that you can't really tell. It's like the area is either going to be in focus or not. But sometimes, like everything's a little bit out of focus, and sometimes I like to just put a defocus as an extra step, and you want to do that within the gamma sandwich, or else you run the risk of it looking like it's blurring the nice edges of the bokeh. So the difference would be, yeah, it's very small, but basically you're trying to do things within the gamma sandwich so that the highlights are blown out. And if I can explain in like a minute, um, when you lower the gamma, it's only leaving the highlights, and then it's doing more to the highlights than it is to everything else. So that's apparently why it's doing that. And the last thing, if I could squeeze it in, would be bokeh shapes. So here I just added even more shapes here. And you can, of course, use this kernel import to put a bokeh shape of whatever you want. I'll just gamma this up a tiny bit so we can see. And so I think I'm going to turn this into a tool because I use it for myself. But basically, I just brought in a switch node with a bunch of iris shapes. The important thing here is the resolution of these things. If you have things at different resolutions, the same as if it's a convolve, it's actually going to change the size of the bokeh. So you want to make them all like the same shape. So just define maybe 512 or 256 or 128. Depends on what you want or how much focus you need. And you could see if I go through this, I'm also doing the gamma trick. If I just take this thing, and this is just a switch going to different read nodes, but you can see I can change bokeh. Oh no, I might run out of memory. No, good. So I can just change. It's the same optical flares, kernels or whatever, but you can use whatever you want. And so I'm just switching. I can show you here. So I'm just switching like. Here we go. We just use that shape, and that's going to be defined there. And to get to that, you go to kernel. It's set by default to circular, and that's going to look like so. But you can just set it to input, and that'll be the case. It's respecting the channel, so you can chromatically aberrate this image. So I just desaturated it and then chromatically aberrated it. Be very careful about your bounding box because if you make the bounding box bigger, it's also doing more calculations. So it's not just the format, it's actually the bounding box. But I don't know if I can prove this, but the scale of it, I know we're running on 1 minute now. The scale of it matters. If I double the scale, oh, does it not matter? Maybe it does matter. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it did. Okay, maybe it doesn't matter. So yeah, I think maybe it's just the different sizes of the shapes or whatever. But okay, so that's pretty much it. I didn't talk too much about the kernels and stuff, but I think everybody kind of knows that stuff. That's the way to customize something. You can even just grab a cropped version of your bokeh from the plate if you have a nice bokeh shape, and you could just use one of the bokehs from the plate if you have a nice one to drive this type of thing. That's mostly everything.
Tony, I have a quick question. I know we're running out of time, but I have had an issue in the past, actually last time yesterday, where the pgBokeh is kind of killing or emptying out channels that aren't RGBA.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if there's a way to fix that. Like the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're setting up the IMATs and depth channels for stereo conversion and stuff like that, and I wasn't able to properly defocus the depth channel with the pgBokeh.
Yeah, thank you. I can cover that really quickly. So you can either use inject all channels, just quickly. I believe that'll cover it. So if I make inject that channel. So if I just name this whatever, I just didn't mean to do that. I just inject channel. So this should now work with this, what I just make. Does it work? Please work. No, it didn't. It's probably because I didn't have it set to all channels. No, I didn't. Now it should. It didn't work.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens to me. When I set it to all, it just doesn't do anything anymore.
Yeah, I know what the issue is. The issue is that this kernel, and that's a very specific question, but I'll answer it. The kernel wants the channel that you need to defocus, because if you don't have the channel in the kernel and you use a kernel, then it doesn't know the channel exists and it'll just make it black. So you need to fake that the channel exists in there, if that makes sense. So I just made this thing whatever RGB. So if I just take that same, I can fix it right now. If I take the same inject mat, so it's alpha to whatever I just typed in. If I change it there, now it should work because the alpha channel is now the channel there. Does that make sense? The channel exists in the kernel, and so now it knows the channel that it's trying to defocus. It needs to know what to do with it. So it goes and looks for the kernel and it looks for that channel. But then when it doesn't find it, it's like, oh, I guess you don't want it anymore, and it makes it black. So if you have
Okay,
the
it makes
DI
sense.
mats,
Yeah.
if you have the DI mats, you have to like just take the alpha channel from this. It's also very important. This iris, this kernel, it needs an alpha channel also, or else you destroy your alpha channel. So if you have a black alpha channel, it'll kill your alpha channel with that. So you actually need one in the kernel. So it's the same issue with the alpha channel. So you just fake the alpha into the channel that you need it, and then that channel exists in the kernel, and then it knows what to do with it in the pgBokeh. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Just for clarification, we had this on Clover as well. It's also the case if you use the ZD-Focus, for example, in the optical ZD-Focus. You need to do
It
the
happens
same.
with every convolve. It happens with every convolve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to, and what we did is basically just copy the kernel into all the channels that we needed, so that, like you said, that it just realizes where it is.
Yeah. The easiest thing, I guess, would just be to whatever mats you have, you just make it so that the alpha channel is converting into whatever channel that you need it to be.
Yeah.
Not a great answer, I suppose, but it's what it is. Okay, cool. So thanks to everybody. I hope I taught something interesting. Sweet.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Very
Thanks.
nice.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. And I was presenting. I was presenting. That's right. Stop presenting. And oh, recording.